Hey guys! Now for the topic of sex versus gender. Okay, so what is sex and what is gender? Just wanted to talk about this because this is a very heated topic and it keeps coming up a lot on YouTube. So I just wanted to address it personally, from my perspective of things and the way I've analyzed these issues. So yeah, what is sex and what is gender? Well, gotta define your terms first. Google defines sex as either of two main categories, male and female, into which humans and many other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions. Merriam-Webster defines sex as either of two major forms of individuals that occur in many species, and they're distinguished respectively as either female or male, or especially on the basis of their reproductive organs and structures. Now, how do you define gender? According to Google, gender is the state of being male or female, typically with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. Merriam-Webster defines gender as the behavioral, cultural, or psychological traits typically associated with one or the other sex. Oxford Dictionary defines gender as either of the two sexes, male and female, especially when considered with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. The term is also used more broadly to denote a range of identities that do not correspond to established ideas of being male or female. The American Psychological Association says gender refers to the attitudes, feelings, and behaviors that a given culture associates with a person's biological sex. Behavior that is compatible with cultural expectations is referred to as, quote, gender normative. Behaviors that are viewed as incompatible with these expectations constitute, quote, gender nonconformity. Now, where this is leading me to go is attitudes, feelings, and behaviors. These are all very relativistic and subjective terms. This is not black and white like sex is, and even that has a lot of gray area in it. Gender is, our perceived ideas of gender are social constructs. Social constructs is what I'm trying to say. And because it's all very relativistic and subjective. So why do people say, oh, there's only two? Well, the answer is simple. It's just this is a knee-jerk reaction to people that consider themselves agender or bigender or something else, not on the traditional two-gender binary. Now, the American Psychological Association then went on to say, sex is assigned at birth, refers to one's biological status as either male or female, and is associated primarily with physical attributes such as chromosomes, hormone prevalence, and external and internal anatomy. Gender refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, and activities and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for boys and men or girls and women. I hope you guys can hear that because a car was passing by, so I'll just repeat that. Gender refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for boys and men or girls and women. These influence the way that people act, interact, and feel about themselves. While characteristics of biological sex are similar across different cultures and while aspects of biological sex are similar across different cultures, they, aspects of gender may differ wildly because it's gender, it's relativistic, it's subjective. Various conditions that lead to atypical development of physical sex characteristics, they are collectively referred to as intersex conditions. So, operating under these definitions, how many sexes are there? Well, two. Two biologically / assigned at birth sexes, plus genetic anomalies in the case of intersex people. But how many genders are there? Well, it's much more subjective than sex, obviously, and it depends on what definition or perspective that you are operating under. Under the popular, societal, or conventional genders / gender role model based on sexist, patriarchal, and a gender normative society, there are only two, plus one amorphous blob for all who don't, quote, don't fit in, he or she. This is also known as the biological reductionist view of gender. In the non-binary agender / genderqueer / gender fluid perspective or camp, which is that of a holistic / personal / self-identified / psychosocial cultural or spectrum view of gender, just as bisexual or pansexual people can relate to sexuality as on a spectrum, there are a lot more possibilities than just two under this camp of thought. In contrast to gender essentialism, which was the first view, i.e. only two with maybe a little bit of wiggle room under the conservative view, there is this second view of gender diversity, or a psychosocial cultural view, which can be further lumped into two camps within that, within this anti-biological reductionist view of gender. Now, the first camp says, there's just one gender, or there should just be one gender, or gender is just a, quote, system. Under the view that gender is purely a social construct that upholds a hierarchical, sexist, patriarchal, gender normative system of society. But some radical feminists then leap to the conclusion that is the conclusion that TERFs leap to. TERFs are radical feminists that believe in a view that gender is just an oppressive system, yes, but they also believe that trans women are not women because they don't see them as valid. They just choose not to see them as valid. Or trans women are just reinforcing the patriarchy / sexism and or the binary view of gender identity, or making some harmful caricature of or stereotype of what it means to be a woman, and by assuming a gender different than the one assigned at birth. I disagree with TERFs vehemently for some pretty obvious reasons, and yet I agree with them on other points. But that's the subject for another video. I acknowledge that trans women are women, but I acknowledge that trans women are different than cis women, but they are still women, in antagonism to the TERF view. Sorry, let me catch my breath here. The other camp, this other second camp that subscribes to this holistic view of gender, says that there are many or potentially infinite genders. Under the liberal feminist or postmodern or liberal / leftist, but not necessarily feminist, but also not necessarily anti-feminist camps. The thing is, we aren't just being postmodern, post-truth SJWs when we say things that, like, trans women are women, or there are more than two genders. Gender is not a biological reality. Sex, however, for the most part, is. Where did I leave off? And last time I checked, it's actually RWNJs, right-wing nutjobs, who are being absurdly post-truth with their views. For instance, that black people do not face systemic injustices and inequalities, and they just need to commit fewer crimes or work harder. Or that the gender pay gap, under the conventional two-gender model anyway, isn't real, or that abstinence-only sex ed works. It doesn't. Or take more black and white physical science examples. Well, it's right-wing nutjobs that claim evolution is just a theory. Spoiler alert, it is a theory, but that doesn't mean it's wrong, and it's not the same as saying, quote, just an opinion. If you actually know just a thing or two about science, and that creationism is equally plausible or valid, or that climate change isn't really happening, or that it's not due to human activities. So right-wing trolls and pundits have come down with a seriously very bad case of pot calling the kettle black, and choosing to seize on a very tiny, albeit important subset of issues that happen to have a lot of gray area and subjective experience interwoven within, in order to claim that lefties are the real anti-science, quote, my feelings, wankers. Now, if you're interested, I've also included a brief description of my theoretical conception of different aspects of gender and sexuality, and how it actually leads to thousands, or potentially infinite combinations. Down below in the comment box. I just didn't want to go, into too much length, at length, and make a super long, drawn-out video about that. I just wanted to get down to the nitty-gritty about things. Yeah. But I just wanted to comment briefly on that these things, your sexuality and gender, are not the same as personality or lifestyle choices. They mean very different things. These are characteristics of people that are all valid parts of different people's identities and life experiences. And neither to be gay, nor to be trans, nor to be pan, nor to be non-binary are, quote, lifestyle choices. They're not. That's a bad assumption that leads to dangerous territory and can potentially add fuel to the fire of bigots. These states of being are just the way that different people are, and they deserve respect and compassion, not shame, judgment, and discrimination. Now, onto the subject of pronouns, shall we? Gender pronouns, that is. Pronouns other than he or she. Well, there's an increasingly well-known third pronoun for non-binary people, or just a general gender-neutral pronoun: they, or them, or their self. Another option for non-binary people is z, or zim, or zer, self. That can be either with an X or a Z, depending on how you want to do that, how you want to spell that. Or hen, or hen, or hens, or hen self. Now, a somewhat informal but respectful and salutary option for anyone, binary or not, whether sex/gender is known or could not be known, could be Hess, or Herm, or Here's self, or just to describe an agender deity potentially, if you believe in deities. And one or one, or ones, or oneself, as a more abstract version of Hess or Herm or Hears. Oneness or divine oneness can be a name for a panentheistic God even. Being can describe anyone, human or non-human. Person or being can describe any human or non-human sentient animals. Now, it, or he, she, let's comment on some unacceptable uses of pronouns here. Unacceptable pronouns, just in general. It, or he, she, is never acceptable, at least when the subject is any sentient being, especially if the subject is a human person and it's just part of polite conversation. It is only acceptable for inanimate objects or a non-sentient, non-human being when said animal does not have a clearly defined sex, or the sex of said being does not matter or is unknown or unknowable. Otherwise, for sentient human and non-human animals, if the being is talked about in the abstract, or if sex or gender of that said being is not clearly defined, does not matter, is unknown, or is unknowable, then a gender-neutral pronoun like they, them, or their is encouraged. Now, these are just guidelines on the usage of pronouns. They're not rules for which you'll inevitably be castigated if you goof up on. But please try to use someone's identified pronouns. Please don't be a deliberately hurtful, bigoted asshole. The flip side of that, though, is, don't get pissed if you're non-binary and your pronouns are z or zim or zer. And z or zim or zer don't exactly roll off the tongue for most of the English-speaking humanity or stick in their memory banks. So, how do I identify? I personally identify as a non-gender conforming trans woman who happens to be pansexual as well. And I use she, her pronouns, but they and them are also acceptable for me. Well, yeah. Until next time, guys. Ciao, ciao.